And one of the things is the problem with the Republican Party is messaging. They're terrible at it. The argument on abortion is basically the same. You're telling me what to do with my body. It's a good argument. I'll give you that. It's a good messaging argument. It's not really true because the state legislature tells you what to do, not government. Government is like the federal government. When I talk about government, federal government. What applies in New York applies in California and applies in Texas. It shouldn't be that way. Each state has its own different jurisdiction. But Republicans keep falling down on this because the argument always goes this way. Well, do you think abortion is murder? Yes, I do. Well, then how come you're not locking him up? Are you going to lock up doctors? Are you going to lock up a teenage girl? And what do you do to that? What typically does the Republican, when faced with that debate, what do? They deflect. They don't answer the question because they don't know what to say. Here's what you do. Little advice, little tip from the host. If I was in a room drinking Scotch whiskey, giving some advice to a candidate on how do I answer that question? What am I supposed to do? Every answer I give is wrong. If I say 15 weeks like Lindsey Graham, then I'm going to insult everybody who thinks life begins at conception. If I back down from it, then I'm going to appear as pro-abortion. If I go total anti-abortion, then I'm going to say I'm a tyrant. I can't win. That's what the Democrats have been pounding over the heads with the GOP. Here's what you do. I have a 3-point plan to solve that for everyone. Oh, you do, Tom? Yeah. First up, the legislature has to decide where, when, and how abortions happen. It's up to the state legislature, and that involves a discussion both with the left and the right. You get a say and I get a say, and then we mutually come to a decision. Well, it's mostly Republican control, so mostly abortion illegal. Well, that's what the people of the state want. But we're going to provide alternatives for people who can't get the abortion but want it, don't want the child. They don't want to be living with the burden, as they say, burden of child. And so childbearing, yeah, it's a burden. And childbearing is a burden for anyone, right or left. If you bring a child into the world, it's going to cost you money. Your life is over because you now have to live for the child. And many people don't want to do that. Okay. I don't want to get into a debate about the morality of it. I don't want to get into the debate of what's right or what's wrong. I'm going to tell you how the state should deal with it. At that moment, when a woman becomes pregnant, and after the legislature has decided, there are 3 escape hatches for a woman who has not decided, I can't have an abortion. I'm not going to go to another state. I don't have the money. I don't have the wherewithal. Nobody's giving me a free ride. Let's assume all that. And you have no escape hatches. We're going to give each person an escape hatch so that they don't have to raise a child that's unwanted. I don't want them to raise a child that's unwanted. They don't want to raise it. Okay. First escape hatch. At that moment, the state is obligated to provide a mother alternative paperwork for adoption. In other words, okay, you're not going to have an abortion. You're not going to travel. What do I do? Here's where you can go so that you can have the child at no expense, and the adoption agency will then adopt it out to a waiting, loving family, and you don't have to worry about it, and then don't have to murder the child. That's escape hatch 1. That's pretty fair. That's as fair as it can be. Assuming that you don't want to travel for the abortion, assuming that your state has said no abortions or no abortions at 15 weeks or whatever you have mutually decided, and you can adjust it later. If you're a legislature, you could say, well, maybe this has been a little too tough. That's not tyranny. When you provide alternatives. Well, I don't want to have to bring the child to term and this and that. Well, I'm sorry. But the majority of the community in a democratic process has said, we don't want to live with the immorality of you committing murder. This is a second escape hatch. There's a second person in this too, right? What about the women? Are you going to put them in jail? No. Republicans should immediately come out and say, no, we're not going to jail any mother who makes a mistake in their life, regrets it, is young, is raped, incest, even though it applies only to 1% of the cases. We're not going to punish someone for unfortunate things to happen in life. We're not going to make a second victim out of this. We're not going to forcibly take the child away anymore. We're going to force them into a situation which is untenable, putting them in prison. That's not right either. That's your second escape hatch. We're not going to say women are guilty of a crime. Well, somebody has to be. If you say it's murder, well, yes. Doctors take a Hippocratic oath. Do no harm. Well, you're going to lock up doctors? No, we're not going to lock up doctors. Because as any state will tell you, there are different grades of murder. There are vehicular manslaughter, there's murder, first degree, second degree, third degree. We're going to call it negligence by medicine. And you did harm when you killed that child. And so we're not going to put the prisoner, the medical doctor, in jail. We're going to take away their license for 3 to 5 years or whatever the legislature says. I'm sorry, your license is suspended and you can reapply for it in 3 to 5 years when you explain yourself to the state. That's all you need to do. Nobody goes to jail, no prisons need to fill, and you've got an answer for the Democrats. Simple as that. No, we're not going to jail anybody, but we're not going to allow this man or woman to practice medicine anymore in this state for a while until they've learned what do no harm means. That will run out all the abortion doctors. That will give options for the mother who may have made an unfortunate decision, may have had a situation where their birth control failed. We'll have options for them. You don't have to raise that child, because what is your complaint? That you want an abortion. I don't want to raise a child. I can't afford it. It's a burden to me. Okay. We're going to ameliorate that. The state is going to pay to raise that child. In other words, while whatever prenatal care you have, we're going to take that, and then at birth, the state adoption agency person will be there, and they will take it off to a loving family who is waiting for it. That's it. Nobody is out too much. Yes, it's an unfortunate situation if you have to bring that child to bear, but you're not going to be burdened with it anymore in your life. And nobody ever talks about it. Nobody ever talks about abortion. Nobody ever talks about a plan to deal with unwanted pregnancies. Nobody ever talks about what punishment. All they want to do is avoid it. It's too difficult to talk about. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say that we're going to lock up doctors. I don't want to say that. And I don't want to lock up doctors, but if I don't, everyone's up in the air. No. Have a concrete plan and speak about it. And speak about it openly. Get it out in front of it. All you candidates, you still have 7 or 8 weeks left. I'm in favor of adoption. I'm in favor of state-sponsored adoption, and we're going to punish the doctors by removing their license. We're not going to incarcerate people for this, because I understand that some people value it as a moral decision, but you cannot practice medicine in this state and commit abortion. End of story. You have violated the Hippocratic Oath on which the license is based. That's it. Just like any other case. Nobody has to go to jail. Nobody has to duck the issue. That's what you do. You get out in front of it and you stand by it and you defend it. That's how you take the abortion issue away from the left. And there's some women that go say, it's still not good enough. I still have the burden of bearing the child. Well, I'm sorry. But there are consequences to behavior. And not everyone can live an unblemished life. There are bad things that are going to happen to you in your life, some of which may be the result of decisions that you made, some of which may be forced upon you. That is a crime. You are raped, is incest. That is an unfortunate situation. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to make 2 crimes happen when 1 happened. And killing a child before it's born is a crime in this state, as determined by the state legislature. And you have a right to appeal that. You have a right to protest that law. And you have a right to change it. That law may not stand on the books. Simple as that. But we're going to enforce our laws. We're going to vote on our laws. We're going to defend our laws. That's what a conservative would think. That's what limited government is all about. Limited. We're going to interfere here. We're going to provide some sort of adoption service. But what we're not going to do is allow rampant murders of children. That's it. I don't see why that's so difficult. And yeah, it is a right-wing point of view. And yes, It's up to the state legislature to determine the point at which we're going to allow abortions, even if that is day 0 or day 1 or day 1,000, whenever it is. We're going to decide. That's the democratic process. That's the way laws in a state are made. And no politician, no matter what office they're running for, governor, senator, anything else, should say otherwise. And the party should be unified on this. You should have a unified position across the board. It shouldn't be, oh, I think this and I think that. No. And you need to defend it as a party. You need to say, no, this party believes that life begins at conception. But we understand that we're not all conservatives in this state. And there are some people that are liberals. So that definition may be mitigated by the legal process of the Legislative Council, just like anything else. There are all kinds of levels of defined cases of murder, second degree, manslaughter, etc. Abortion should be no different. No, we're not going to lock up doctors. No, we're not going to lock up mothers. Yes, we are going to provide for those children. You need to provide escape hatches. Not everyone is going to agree with you on what you do, but you can still maintain your principles and still maintain your standards while providing those escape hatches for those who don't. That's called governance. That's not tyranny. Let's move on. I want to talk about the nonsense about Italian Prime Minister Meloni. We'll be right back.